Hey, what's going on everyone? Designedcoma here, welcome back. And the gameplay you're watching is me playing some Black Ops 3. Got some TDM going on Aquarium, and I decided to try out the MX Garand. To be honest with you, it's a fun weapon to play with, but it really takes some time getting used to the way it reloads. I mean, you got to empty the magazine completely in order for that thing to reload. And I'll tell you what, it took me some time getting used to that, to empty it out. So all in all, in the end, I had a good time with it. It wasn't too bad. Did pretty good with it. Not great. It was still a lot of fun. So what's up for today's video? Well, I came across an article about the console life cycle. Now, I talked about this a little while ago in a different video, just briefly, just a tiny bit, and it looks like the consoles are going to be taking on, I guess you could say, the smartphone type life cycle in terms of the hardware. I can see this being a good thing because it's not going to really affect the games that we're playing. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to play the same games on the older console in terms of the architecture when it comes to that. And I'm going to go through this article a little bit. I'll have a link in the description for you to go check out the entire article. It's rather lengthy, so I just kind of pulled some of the interesting points out of it that I thought was worth sharing and really made some sense and kind of speaks to what this is all about. So we all know, the last several years consoles are moving towards this, I guess you could say in the article, the way they describe it is a tipping point. Now that all major console players are basically on the same platform like the PC, this is kind of what they're looking at. There's this shift going towards removing or stopping the traditional 5 to 7 year console life cycle. And so many quotes in here. The consumer is attuned to a different cadence of innovation in technology, thanks in great part for the upgrades cadence on mobile phones or PCs. Sony Interactive Group CEO Andrew House told the Financial Times back in June while talking about the company's console, the Neo. Microsoft, they have the upcoming Xbox One S, which actually it has already released, which now supports HDR and 4K video streaming. It's a step towards the roadmap in terms of getting away from the 5 to 7 year life cycle of consoles. Project Scorpio and Neo will be the first major milestones in a new evolutionary process. With Sony and Microsoft's new consoles rumored to come out next year, this would represent a short 4-year gap between console cycles. Unlike the previous console generations, Microsoft says it isn't abandoning the Xbox One and says the Project Scorpio will not supplant the Xbox One like the Xbox One supplanted the Xbox 360, meaning that any Xbox One games that were created you were not able to play on the Xbox 360. The company is asserting that both consoles will live alongside each other. So think of this like your smartphone, where a new phone comes out, like you have the Galaxy S7 and then the Galaxy S7 Edge came out. In terms of hardware and functionality, they both really work the same way. It's just the S7 is newer in the technology, and just because it's newer doesn't mean that your apps are not going to work on it. Compatibility has always been a thing that makes console generations define themselves. When you leave one and go to the next, you give up your games. You usually give up the hardware or throw it in a closet. That's what we want to remove. Microsoft stated that you'll see the same games work across its different Xbox ecosystems moving forward. They announced 3 platforms, Xbox One, the S, and the Scorpio. We're giving gamers a choice to say, I want to invest in these particular games and this particular hardware, and I want those to work going forward. I don't have to worry about giving that up. Project Scorpio is obviously offering higher fidelity graphics, able to render native 4K experiences, and the relationship sounds analogous to how long budget gaming PCs and high-end gaming rigs are able to play the same games just with different graphical settings. Now, Sony's stance on this is the Neo, their upcoming Neo, which the company itself is referring to as a more high-end PS4. Parallels Microsoft's philosophy, with House telling the Financial Times that Neo is intended to sit alongside and complement the standard PS4, adding that we will be selling both versions through the life cycle cycle and mentioning that all games will support the standard PS4. So you're kind of probably sitting there wondering, how is this all possible? I'm going to get to that here in a little bit. It's coming up. With the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, struggling to be backwards compatible. This is where we get into backwards compatibility. Okay, I can't even say that. We'll just say the older consoles. We'll just say the older consoles, 360 and PS3, requiring emulation or manually recompiling games. How can Sony and Microsoft reliably make backward compatibility promises moving forward? And that's where it really made things difficult, is some games worked and some didn't. And eventually it got to be just too expensive and Sony just backed away from it. That's why there was this. They ended backwards compatibility at some point with the PS3. I think it was with the Slim. I don't think anything was backwards compatible on that. So how is this all really possible? Basically, the thing that makes this possible is now Sony and Microsoft have gone with the x86 processors for their Xbox One and PlayStation 4 consoles. So you're wondering, what is the x86? You see that everywhere on PCs. Basically, this is the instruction set that personal computers have been using for years, which is true. They've been using them for years. PCs have been building off this old CPU architecture since it was released, or since Intel released its 8086 processor in 1978. So that's how long they've been using this. The architecture, the greatest part of this is the assets include scalability and legacy support, which means you can go pick up a super old game from back in the 80s and still put it into your computer and it will play. This is what's making this ability for the shorter life cycle to be possible, because now they've moved to this x86. So when it comes to backwards compatibility, it's going to be rather simple. It doesn't matter what console version you're going to have. Any games that come out are going to be playable regardless of the version of the console that you have, except for like 360 games or PS3 games. That's where they have to be backwards compatible with the PS4, Xbox One, and so on, which is possible, and they've already done that. There's a lot of 360 games available on the Xbox One, and there are some PS3 games that are available for PS4. So this is really, really cool, and this isn't necessarily forcing the consumer to have to go out and buy an entirely brand new console simply because of the fact that, great, now my games aren't going to play on it. That's not going to be the case. The only reason you're going to be looking to buy one of the new consoles when it does come out, whether it's a 2-year life cycle or 3 years life cycle, I think they're looking to do a 2-year type life cycle thing. Eventually, it's to the point where this is going to be a really good thing for those that want to invest in the newer hardware. But if you're one of those people who really sees no point in it, doesn't really care about the 4K or the HDR and all that kind of stuff and getting that higher resolution, then you're not going to have to worry about it. The games are still going to play. They may not look as good as they will on, obviously, the better version of the console that you currently have. And that's really the only downside to it. And obviously the hardware is going to be better, processor is probably going to be better, and it just all around the performance will end up being better than the current console that you have. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys found this interesting. Definitely go check out the article. Like I said, I just pulled some of the more interesting parts out of it that kind of made sense to me, and you'll kind of get everything when you get to the article and you read it and you read everything through. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, favorite, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Step up if you want to get burnt.